Everyone, this is Lida of ACC Global. I would like to welcome and acknowledge our viewers for this afternoon's event. This is pretty much exciting as we all learn together on how to build a promising career as a social worker here in Australia. And to make it more exciting, stay tuned, focus more, and make some notes if necessary, because at the end of the webinar, we are giving $100 worth of gift card to one of our viewers who can answer first our question. This afternoon's webinar is all about social work and social worker as a profession. I remember a famous social worker in my home country who happens to be my friend once said, "A heart of a true social worker is the heart that truly cares." To help me enlighten all your inquiries and questions are the experts on this field. Without further ado, let me introduce to you the three panelists to begin with. Dr. Tejaswini Patil, the Program Coordinator of Master of Social Work Qualifying at Federation University. Second, the industry partner represented by Andrew McCausland, the Senior Manager of Education Early Intervention Services, Berry Street, Western Region. And an inspiration to social work students, a Master of Social Work graduate, now employed as a social worker at Ballan District Health and Care, Preeti Vaswani. Okay, so to help me elaborate more about this profession, my question goes first to Tejaswini. Can you tell us a bit more about Master of Social Work program offered at Federation University?
Thank you, Lydia, for the introduction, and I welcome everyone across the world. And Andrew was just saying it might be not that cold in other parts of the world, particularly this is the Southern Hemisphere. So we are coming from the cold part of the world, so to speak. But I hope more importantly, your family and friends are safe, because we do know that the global pandemic has affected certain parts of the world much more significantly and profoundly, and it has involved close family, friends, and members who have been who might have been affected by the coronavirus. So I hope your family circumstances is relatively better. When I say that in inverted commas. So I hope you're all safe. So this is just what I might now do is I might actually just give you just a bit of heads up about some of the key features of the MSWQ program. In relation to the Master of Social Work Qualifying program, we recently revised the program, and we now have a restructured, refreshed, and exciting program. Usually the Master of Social Work Qualifying is a 2-year program, and you have 6 subjects in first year, or units in first year, and 6 in the second year. One of the units in your first year, that is second half of your first year, you will have 500 hours of placement, and then there will be a final placement at the end of the program, which is again another 500 hours. So in total, 1,000 hours of what's called field placement or practicum. And you also have a range of subjects in year 1 and year 2. For example, to give you a sample of the subjects you might find within the program would be Foundations of Social Work Theories, which is our first unit. Then you will have Professional Social Work Practice, which is very much a practice skill-based unit, particularly for casework, counseling, micro skills. That's working closely with individuals, if you like, and in a group setting. Then you have community work and community development, and many of you might have background in that field of working with non-governmental organizations and community development, social movement, community participation kind of experience already. So that's another subject. And some other subjects could be social policy, if you like, working with people with diverse backgrounds. In Australia, you might be aware, we've got First Nations peoples, that is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And also cross-cultural groups, because Australia is very much like many, like the United States. It's a migrant society. So you will also have that unit that is trying to frame how to work with Australia's First Nations peoples, and also cross-cultural groups. In second year, for example, Andrew will speak more about his experience and his expertise in this field, and the role Berry Street plays. But we will be looking at child protection, for example. The other subject, the other area we'll be looking at is in the newly revised structure. We'll be looking at family violence in a range. So what we'll be looking at, you will be introduced to a range of fields of practice. That is, when you have in the community human services sector, what types of social issues you might be facing. So we've got family violence, we've got child protection, etc. So, and the final unit, which runs simultaneously with your placement, is what we call a capstone unit. A capstone unit means a unit that brings the whole program together. And what we will do is we will do a revision and a review of the various components of social work practice. So this is broadly what type of units you will find in the program, how long is the program, and what is the length of the placement. So that's broadly about the program itself. I will make two further comments. One is around the program delivery. That means how is the program or the courses or the units structured within the program. So what we do at Federation University, I think this is something which I think is, it provides flexibility for students, is we run one unit or subject at a time. That means you will start with the first subject. You have 3 fortnightly scheduled seminars. Usually they are 7 hours. So the Friday seminars are usually fortnightly and scheduled for 7 hours. Every subject, if you like, has got 3 seminars. You finish subject 1, then you go to the next subject, and so on and so forth. You progress through year 1 and year 2. So that's how the program is structured. And I think it gives a lot of flexibility even for international students who might have family and other commitments when they are in Australia. Now, finally, the thing which I think some of the key features in our revised and renewed structure is around how we have been able to make it more contemporaneous, more case scenario based, because I think at the absolute core of social work, which is a professional, which is a practice-based profession, whilst our principles around social justice and human rights drive the values of the profession, at the end of the day, as a social work educational provider, our obligation, professional and ethical obligation, is to provide you with skills and knowledge on how to practice within such a field. And so in order to meet that requirement, you will see the new refresh curriculum having a lot of simulation activities that mirror real world scenarios. So even in classes, your seminars you will be going to, there will be a number of what we call active learning exercises. What does that mean? It means you will have case studies, you might have group debates, you might have various questions. Your teachers will be asking you to work with collaboratively in a group or individually, and then come back and have a general class discussion. Even the assessments now are very much case study focused. That means you will have case scenarios which mimic real world experience. So I think these are some of the features of the changes and the type of experience you will get if you choose Federation University.
Okay, thank you for that information, Dr. Tejaswini. And then my next question is for our industry partner, Andrew. Yeah, is social worker in demand in Australia? And then are there any trends that you have observed as Australia gradually recovering from COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lida, for the introduction. But first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm meeting on the traditional owners of the land, the Wathaurong, and I acknowledge their role in the existence of a First Nation in our country, and I'm sure there's people around the world that also have an awareness of Indigenous rights, and we certainly recognise that when we conduct these conversations. I just started my comments with that welcome to country. Now, if we're looking, so my name's Andrew McCausland. I manage what is a significant area of land in our region, and it extends for probably maybe 400 or 500 kilometres from a country area right to the fringe of the Melbourne city. There's non-statutory work that my program does with children and vulnerable families. And the team is about 20 workers. At any one time, we're working with 200 or 300 vulnerable children and their families. Now, we call it an education early intervention program because what we're focused on is an assertive outreach approach with these particular vulnerable families. And I suppose we're recognising that people have multiple vulnerabilities. This isn't about solving problems with one single way to think. It's often about multiple services working together. So the sort of person who suits the work that I do within my programs will be somebody, I suppose, that's able to respond in a very timely way to vulnerable children and families. So it's for me, it's a type of emergency service. We're looking at a person that has the personal attributes to manage their emotions and their thinking and problem solve and plan while you're forming relationships and partnerships. And the work is very much through the prism of trauma. Now, COVID's come along. We've got a role over the last 10 years working with vulnerable families, but we've actually got a new cohort. Now, this new cohort is actually has been vulnerable, but have had enough support around them for them not to tip over into the need for service provision. So what COVID's done is it's driven a group of people who have been quite safe in their vulnerability and their resilience into a space that they don't have that sort of support and they become isolated. So the kind of the issues that we're seeing industrially is a significant spike in family violence in our region. It's created a kind of a flow through that's causing homelessness with, and particularly older women. There's a particular cohort that's emerged that's very much a COVID cohort. We have to be very responsive, and the sort of people that I love to have in my team have that kind of ability to adapt and to change and be able to work as a team very closely. Now, bringing up the idea of team, we work very closely with Federation University as our industry link is a really critical one. My team has quite a number of students that have come through as students from Fed Uni, and I've worked closely with Tejaswini to give them the coaching aspect of their training. So you go to Fed Uni and you get an incredibly solid foundation in some of the underpinning theories and knowledge that you need to become an exceptional social worker. But the collaboration that industry does with Fed Uni creates the coached partnership to prepare you to apply those ideas in the field. So we're very practical about that. The sort of people need to have a very deep understanding of the response that we need to have to vulnerable cohorts, but they've also got to have the ability to reflect and work through their own responses. This is that emergency service aspect. It's very much about needing to regulate and think clearly and have a toolkit that has a range of ways that you can adapt to other people, and empathy is at the core of that. So just that's a kind of a brief overview. And like I said, Fed Uni and Berry Street, my agency Berry Street, have a very, very close partnership. And we're very, very proud of the workers that come through our programs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. And then let's hear from Preeti, your former student, now a social worker. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey from an international student to a full-time social worker here in Australia?
Thank you, Lita. Thank you for the introduction. And I completely agree with Tejaswini and Andrew and how they have shared their thoughts. But as an international student, I would like to let everybody know that we as international students go through mixed feelings when we choose to study at an international platform. The journey is not always very smooth. There are a few bumps that we experience. However, the zeal to accomplish our dreams keeps us moving with determination and passion. And once we know that we are close enough to reach our destination, we become more inclined to work towards our goals and our aims, because we choose to study at an international platform for a purpose, and the purpose remains with us. So the field of social work, as Tejaswini mentioned, that it gives us an opportunity to complete 1,000 hours of field placements in the area of our interest. And as an international student, I would say that played a very crucial role in building our relationship with the people who are already working in the industry. So those 1,000 hours are the turning point, as we not only learn the practical aspects of the course, but also get an opportunity to be supervised and guided by the experts. And for me also, Federation has played a very major role. My supervisors, my field practitioners, they were all so very supportive all throughout my journey during both the placements. And at the same time, I would also suggest to all international students that in Australia, volunteering also plays a very important role in finding us a job. There are many organizations that provide volunteering opportunity to international students. So I would recommend to reach out to different organizations, as there is always, again, a process to recruit volunteers too. So that often acts as a stepping stone for us as the international students, because we learn a lot from it and we build our relationships.
What a touching experience, Preeti. Thank you for that. And Preeti, I have a follow-up question for you. Do you have any advice to other international students to help them secure employment after finishing their course?
Well, Lita, again, I would say that it wasn't an easy journey, I would say that, and I won't mind sharing it at all, that it was not an easy ride for me to get a full-time role as a social worker. I graduated not long enough, but I graduated in 2019, and I had to wait a while to get a job as a social worker. However, I would say that it prepared me stronger and better. We all struggle a bit, but the only thing that I didn't stop doing was applying for jobs. And my passion to work as a social worker kept me going even after facing rejections or not getting shortlisted for interviews. So take it as an advice, no matter what, we have to keep going. We have to keep trying. The best thing about our industry in social work is, this is again my personal experience, that there is no shortage of jobs. One can start with a support worker, a caseworker role, and then go on to join the area that interests you the most, be it family violence, disability, homelessness, aged care, mental health, child protection, legal aids. So we have a wide variety of options with us. We just have to choose our interest and the area that we would like to work in.
Okay, thank you. I can really feel the passion. Okay, so let's ask again, Dr. Tejaswini, why do you think international students should study social work and consider becoming a social worker in Australia? And how to become a qualified social worker in Australia?
Thank you, Lida, for asking me about the two aspects here. Now, in terms of why do I think international students should study social work? Fundamentally, if you look historically and philosophically, social work is an international profession. The International Federation of Social Workers, the very basis and the core values of the profession were developed and also developed through consultation, advice from all the continents of the world. So social work is from all the continents. And in some ways, there are core principles that connect us all in terms of advocating for health and well-being of individuals, communities, families, etc. That's one. And then principles of social justice and human rights. Now, these are universal principles across the board, and the job of a social worker is to work and impact in these areas where there are social issues. So number one is the fact that there is if you like, an international understanding of the values for the profession. So that's number one. Now, specifically, when we come to the question of why study in Australia and consider becoming a social worker in Australia, there are two or three things I would like to articulate, which will position our students advantageously. Number one, Federation University has got campuses across various regions of Victoria, both regional areas as well as the peri-urban setting of Melbourne. So we also have got access to the metropolis of Melbourne, but also the western region of Victoria and also the Gippsland or the southeast region of Victoria. Based on these campuses and the networks we have got strong industry relationships and partnerships in these regions. That's number one. So I think one of the advantages of studying, particularly doing placements in a university such as Federation, is the access you get to both metropolitan areas as well as regional areas. The second reason is to think about the workforce gaps in terms of social workers in Australia. The skills job network, that's a federal government study which was done by the Productivity Commission. And what they projected was that there are significant gaps in terms of the need of social workers across Australia. So the profession is now actually projected to grow 29% from 2020 to 2024. So that means there will be 29% growth of social workers or social work graduates that are required to fill the various gaps within the workforce. And I think the advantage Federation University program has is because it has got various regional campuses, our university, through the collaborations, through field placements, can also assist and contribute to filling these workforce gaps. As Preeti said, I mean, I'm not saying that everything, the picture is all positive and you will straight away get a job. But what our university does is it provides access for our students to go to regional areas and contribute to rural communities and make a difference in meaningful ways. And workforce retention and recruitment is one of the key issues there. So I think there is a lot of, if you like, growth prospects, both Australia-wide, but also in the regions. And I think Federation is uniquely positioned to contribute to social work workforce development. I think, and the question is, and consider becoming a social worker in Australia. So I think that's the reason I've articulated. And as Preeti said, there are a number of range of areas which you can work. So the diversity of the types of areas you can work in, whether it's child protection, family violence, policy, mental health, disability, aged care, even youth and criminal justice systems. So this across the board, there are variety of fields you can choose. And the other thing to also remember is with global changes, whether it is the climate change issues, whether it is the global pandemic, it is profoundly reshaping the lives of people. So it is also impacting on communities. You might say there's a climate crisis, like, for example, the wildfires last year in Australia. There was catastrophic fires, which impacted communities not only in an environmental sense, but also the social networks, families where their whole lifestyle was disrupted, their communities were disrupted. So that means that the global challenges which are common to many countries is also very much common even in Australia. And particularly environmental crisis tends to impact rural and regional communities very hard. So there is always greater access and scope to work in these communities and to contribute. So I think that's the reason. And then finally, how can someone become a qualified social worker in Australia? To answer it simply, if you do the 2-year program, at the end of successful completion of the 2-year program, you will be eligible for the membership of the Australian Association of Social Workers. So that will give you eligibility for membership or a qualified social worker, to be called a qualified social worker.
Excellent point, Dr. Tejaswini. Okay, for Andrew, are there any specific skills and experience you are looking for when hiring a social worker in your organization? And what does the general recruitment process look like?
Yeah, thank you, Leda. Now, I've actually got a document that I use to review workers when they commence, and what it does is it articulates a bit the sort of skills and attributes that I look for. So I think it's useful just to give you just some very clear, structured ideas about the sort of competencies that we look for. So it's like a capability framework. I'll take my glasses off for this because this Zoom aspect is so hard to, with all the bits of paper flying around. Okay, so the attributes are demonstrating leadership. So inspiring understanding of purpose and direction, building individual, community and organisational capability, promoting teamwork. A person who cultivates productive working relationships. They develop and nurture connections, communicate with courage and care, delivering quality outcomes. There's a big shift towards measuring our work by outcomes. It's the old idea that love isn't actually enough. This isn't just about being able to work with people in a friendly way. It's about working in a purposeful way. Adapting, supporting and managing change. So it's about being an agent of change, and the core way that you do that is via the subtlety of your communication, the relationship skills. The ability to think clearly. I talked earlier about the pressure sometimes that is a part of this work, but the ability to be able to not be dysregulated by the things that are happening around you, and to keep that focus on developing purposeful plans for people. So harnessing information, creating and utilising opportunities, solving problems, obtaining perspective through reflection, theory, and experience. And the last one is managing self. So controlling and managing emotions and behaviour, developing healthy, protective behaviours. So that's our capability framework. And I think it gives you a bit of insight into, I suppose, the detail that we bring to this work. We actually want people to view this profession as a skill set that you are the tool of change within an environment like any place in the world that requires a type of person that is open to changing and developing and learning. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture. So if you're applying for work, so Preeti has also introduced the idea that you start in the field. So we have residential care that is part of our work. And if you're not familiar with the child protection system in Australia, there's a way that a young person can, a child or a young person, if they're living in an environment that's unsafe, the government can actually make a decision and apply to the courts to provide a safe place, and then workers can then work with the family and the child to develop a change within that family. So that's the Australian child protection system. The point that you can be learning about the skills that I've just talked about is in residential care. So that's a place in which children and adolescents have a wraparound support within their house. So it's a housing strategy, and that's a really good entry point to the organisation. But again, I look for workers that have got a broad range of experience, and I certainly champion diversity in my team, because I think that having the ability to have multiple viewpoints is a very creative space. It means people can bounce ideas off each other and learn off a range of viewpoints. And in our field, we work with a range of different sorts of people. So the engine room of that is the diversity that I build into my programs, and certainly encourage people from a wide range of backgrounds to pursue this particular area. And again, like I said, I'm very passionate about this work because it is via the relationships and the therapeutic relationships that we create change, and not a medication. So I think that's a really important point to make about how I believe this work is so important.
I definitely agree, Andrew. Thank you for that information.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah. And Preeti, can I ask you one more time, what inspired you to become a social worker, and what does a typical day look like as a social worker for you?
Yeah. So, well, to let you all know that I was in the field of education for most of my career in my home country. So when I moved to Australia, I started volunteering for different organizations while studying. So it was during that time I was introduced to the field of social work, wherein when I learned more about social work, all the things that I was learning were aligning to what I always wanted to do, because social work is a profession in which we put our compassion into action. We encourage, we motivate, and we help people help themselves. So I possess such qualities wherein I always wanted to make a difference in the life of individuals. Even if it is a little teeny tiny thing, but that smile and that ray of hope which we bring in their lives, that means a lot to all of us. So my inspiration to become a social worker was my zeal to help and empower people and guide them through difficult phases of their life. And in my current role, this is all that I'm doing. And Lita, to your next question, what does my day look like? I'm sure that both Tejaswini and Andrew would agree with me that our every day is a fresh new day for us. We cannot plan things ahead. It's always like we are always dealing with different clients, different issues on everyday basis. So in my capacity as a social worker, my duties are many and they are varied, which includes carrying out interviews, attending meeting with clients and their families in order to assess their situation and their needs, conducting psychosocial assessments, creating case notes, collaborating and coordinating with both internal and external stakeholders. And we also have to make various referrals in the best interest of the family and individuals. So not only that, we also have to work on our professional development. And I do participate in ongoing trainings and development courses, which are like through AASW, which is Australian Association of Social Workers, to ensure that I carry out my duties to the highest standards possible. So I would say that our days are always varied and we always await the new challenges on daily basis. Yeah.
Wow, you are such really a true and gifted social worker. Okay, so to all our panelists, before we're almost done with our webinar, any additional information that you want to mention to our viewers? Dr. Tejaswini? Additional information?
I think for me, listening to Preeti and Andrew, I think the key thing is if you're planning to undertake degree in a Australian context, one of the things to orient yourself, to transition to life in Australia, to understand Australian culture, Australian organizational setup, to understand how community human services sector do, is to take initiative, be proactive, and put yourself out there, even if it is uncomfortable and not an easy thing to do, is to actually take, whether it is you have connections through various associations and networks, associations through clubs, societies, or even voluntary work. And I think what that does is it feeds into developing some of the attributes Andrew talked about in terms of what they would want, and Preeti through her description actually talks about. One is taking initiative, being adaptable, understanding the environments you actually work in, because it can be a cultural shock coming to Australia and transitioning from a completely different cultural setup, and it takes time to actually get a hang. And sometimes you never get a hang, but essentially what I'm saying is understanding a different culture takes time. So orienting and transitioning is really critical. And I think you can take ownership of your own educational experience, but also your own social cultural experience. So it goes back to the attribute of taking leadership. That's what their agency is looking for. It's not so much you've got the experience, but do you have the attributes or the qualities to actually get successful employment, to succeed in a foreign environment. And I think even Preeti talked about some of the attributes, and having those. Also, the other thing I would suggest to students who are preparing, or prospective students who want to come to Australia, is to think of why are they choosing social work? Because I think understanding why you are choosing social work or why you want to do social work will allow you and guide you, and that deep sense of commitment will get you through the hard times, because no one is saying here that it's not a journey which has got both exciting parts to it, but also it's got down parts to it. So I think these are some of the things I think folks who are thinking of coming to Australia and make the choice also want to consider.
Okay, excellent point of view. And then let's now ask maybe the viewers, since we are almost done with our webinar. Viewers, are you ready for $100 question?
Lita?
Whoever answer first, of course, not the panelist.
Oh, I had my hand ready for the buzzer.
Lita, can I also say one last thing?
Oh, sorry for that. Okay, Preeti.
Just a practical advice that if anybody is looking for a social work job and on an international level, so one thing that I also learned that we really need driving license. So without, yes, so social work, if we have to, because our work involves a lot of meeting and outreaching. So that is also one of the main things we should always have with us.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Preeti. And then, Andrew, do you have a last minute additional info?
Yeah, look, the last thing I'd like to say is that every person that enters this profession needs to be open to reflection. And I'm not looking for somebody who's the perfect person. I actually look for somebody who's open to learning and is able to look at their own life and reflect on the sorts of ways that you may need to change relative to challenge. You know, I've traveled to 25 countries across the world, and I've been confronted by all sorts of fascinating things in life, but a lot of your ability to adjust for me is at the core of becoming a good social worker. And like I said, it's not arriving perfect out of the box when you turn up. It's actually being really open to growth and change.
Awesome, Andrew. Okay, so let's go back to our viewers for a $100 question. Whoever answer first. Not the acronym, but the complete one. What is the assessing body for social worker here in Australia? Okay, you can type or chat your answer.
Pretty easy, $100.
Okay, let's just wait for the viewers to answer that one. Okay, we have one from, okay, who's this one?
Hi, Cleo.
No, from Jatinder.
Yes.
So you won that. He I don't know, he or she answered Australian Association of Social Workers. Is it right, Dr. Tejaswini? Can you confirm?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, she, sorry Jatinder for that. Okay, so thank you so much, panelists, for the inputs and knowledge that we are learning today. Social worker profession is one of the vital professions of this day's world struggle. We need you, social workers. We are all in this together. Let's all hope that whoever is passionate working with individuals, groups, and community as a whole will pursue their calling to be of service of humanity. Giving care of a few people is a daunting task. What more for our entire community? All the best to our future social workers who will become faithful to their responsibilities. To everyone, if you still have questions and clarifications to our panelists, since we don't have enough time and wanted to inquire for a social work course, kindly message us through our website, aeccglobal.com.au, or even in Facebook or Instagram. Stay safe, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.